The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here along with Dan Rylance. Very pleased to welcome back to the show City Clerk for the City of Oshkosh, Pam Ubrig. And we're going to be talking about the new voter ID bill and what you need to know as you get ready to go to the polls. And again, and we'll stress this throughout the show, it's not in effect right now. It goes into effect as law for elections starting in 2012. But they're kind of getting folks prepared at the polls now, asking for IDs and that kind of thing. So Pam's going to tell us all about it, and so we're happy to have you here.
Hi,
welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Nice to be here.
Yeah.
2011 has been an interesting year for the clerk's office. We had 2 elections that were scheduled, and then now we're having 2 that are additional. So my budget will be blown this year.
By how much? Do you have some sense?
Roughly, probably about 40,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you have to remember we also had a recount at the local level, and then we had the recount at the county level for the Supreme Court. And it was interesting at the city level between Peck and Hall, the difference in the votes and how the turnout was, it was even. And we had to draw the cards. And I thought it showed or demonstrated how every vote counts. Mm-hmm. It's really important. And what we found during the recount where we picked up or we lost votes were how the voters marked their ballots. They either didn't color the circle in, they X'd it, or they underlined the candidates' names. So it's real important that the voters take the time and actually color that circle in when they go to vote.
Okay, well, let's talk a little about that. And can we just talk about the draw of the cards? Because, Dan and I both heard from people about how stupid that was and how rinky-dink it makes the city look. And the thing is, that's the way the law is set up, right?
Correct.
That it
the
has
state
to be,
statutes, it's a chance of luck or draw. So I had many options. We had dice, we had cards, drawing of the straws, and we decided that we would use a deck of cards.
Yeah.
Did you use a new deck of cards?
I did. I officially went out and bought a brand new deck. I opened it in front of both candidates, shuffled them, and they drew. It was interesting.
Yeah.
What were the card differences between the 2 candidates, do you remember?
The what?
What did they draw, each of them?
One had a queen, I think, didn't he?
Mr. Hall drew 3 of spades.
Okay.
And Mr. Peck drew the queen of spades.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty big difference there.
Big difference.
One very low and one very high.
Yeah, interesting.
And now they're both on the council anyway. So
they are.
That worked out fine. But you are right, though, about every single vote counting. And we've had situations like that in the past. I recall vaguely when Shirley Maddox was running for council and Frank Tower, there was a recount between them. And it hinged on just a few votes, too, didn't it?
It did, yes. And it was also interesting between our local recount and the Supreme Court. With the council candidates, they chose not to count the ballots that were on the TSX, the touchscreen, and we didn't have to reconcile the poll books. So it was a lot shorter in time frame. We just had to go through the paper ballots. With the Supreme Court, Sue Ertmer, the county clerk, she had to go through and reconcile all the poll books and then go through the TSX ballots. So it took a little bit longer, well, it took a lot longer actually, than what it did at the local level.
Yeah.
So,
one more question. You just brought up about the TSX machines. That's the electronic balloting. How is that going? Because when they were being introduced, there was a lot of controversy over that and a lot of discussion. Some people thought it was the greatest thing. Some people thought it was horrible. Are you finding a lot of use of those machines?
Over the years, it has continually increased the use, and as the voters realize that when they lift that cover, there's actual printout of their ballot, so they get to actually see it before they hit cast ballot,
Okay.
and where it rolls up into the canister where it's sealed.
Okay.
So it's grown over the years. I have some districts that would love to have another one. Yeah.
Well, I'll admit I haven't tried it yet. Have you, Dan?
A long time ago, yeah.
Did you? Yeah,
And
I
I think
haven't
what
tried
she
it.
said about wanting to see the ballot really takes away the insecurity of a voter voting, right? I mean, that they know that it's
They know that
going to be recorded.
Yes, they can
Yeah.
look on the screen that, Pam Ubrig, City Clerk, and then on the tape it says Pam Ubrig, City Clerk, before they cast it.
Well, and if
Sometime you'll have to come over when I test the machines and you can have an opportunity to play on it.
I'll do that. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll do that. And of course, if people have sight problems, there's someone there who can help them. Correct.
Correct.
So
We can set the machines up so that when they put their voter access card into the machine, they put the headsets on, it actually talks them through the ballot.
Oh, cool. Now, does it take longer to vote that way than it?
Sure.
Because
It takes a
you've
lot
got
longer.
Okay.
A lot longer.
When you
And
say a lot, like, what
it
do you
depends
mean?
on the ballot though also. I mean, if we're talking about the recall, it's not going to take that long. But when you go to like the September, where it's many names, many positions on that ballot, it takes a long time to go through that.
Well, maybe I'll try it out for the recall. Well, no, I'm voting absentee in the recall,
No, you
so
won't
I
be
guess I
able to
won't.
then.
I guess I won't try that either.
Won't work.
But I will try it.
I'll be testing next week.
All right,
So
okay.
you come on over.
All right. Okay, well,
Okay.
let's talk about voter ID.
Okay.
This is going to be something new for us. And I have to say now, I vote over at Oshkosh West High, and when we went to vote, in the primary not so long ago, it really wasn't that bad. The weird thing, and I thought it was kind of cool because you showed your ID and they checked a little something off and they asked you to sign it, and I was waiting for them to kind of turn it around for me to sign, but part of it is printed one way and another part is printed the
Yes.
opposite way.
Yeah.
I brought the poll book so that I wanted to show that when they vote or when they sign, all you have to do is slide it to the voter, they can sign it, and then it comes back. It's not a lot of flipping.
Yeah, it was really slick the way that worked.
Okay, is the surname going to remain first?
This was discussed with the Government Accountability
Okay.
Board. We didn't have a lot of say in the layout of this, but in our discussions, we did ask that they reverse it and put
Sure.
the first name and then the last name.
You're not used to writing her last name first.
Well, it's
right?
your signature.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you would still sign it Pam Ubrig.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
Ubrig.
Even though it's
Pam.
Not you,
reversed.
though.
Well, yeah, don't sign my name, please.
Gee, I did on the last one.
They didn't question it? No.
Yeah, it was really slick, and it went so fast. I mean, of course, we weren't standing in line either, waiting. It might slow it down a little bit during a presidential election or something like that, but I didn't find that many problems with it. But this is going to affect a lot of people in one way or another. So can we talk about what the new rules really say? You have to have a
Certainly.
picture ID, correct?
Certainly. I want to bring out, there's two segments. There's photo ID. That's where people are going to vote, where they want to show ID. And then there's proof of residency. Those are the individuals that are registering to vote. So, for example, I have my driver's license. It has, it has my old address on. When I go into the polls, they're going to ask for ID. And I want individuals to know that in 2011, it's a soft implementation. They do not have to show their ID at this point. They will have to show it in 2012 for sure, okay? But when they asked me to show my ID, I actually, showed it to them. They lifted their head up, looked to make sure there was some resemblance of this person is Pam Ubrig. And at that point, then they would get my signature, I would get my number, I would go onto the ballot table and make the decision if I was going to cast my ballot by paper or electronic. So that's the photo ID portion of it.
Now, you
okay?
mentioned your address being different.
It's being different because I'm registered at my current address. If you look up Pam Ubrig, it has my current address in here, okay? And it's different than the address that's on here. But all they're verifying is that I'm the person voting in
So
this
if
ID.
the address is different, as long as it's in the city, it doesn't matter then, or?
It doesn't even have to be in the city,
Okay.
because let's say somebody came in June and into my office, they registered, they provided the documentation, they're now in the poll book.
Okay,
They may have, you know, an old Wisconsin driver's license with, let's say, Fond du Lac address. All they're doing is verifying that there's some resemblance of this person that matches the person voting.
Okay.
That's photo ID, okay?
Okay. But
So-
don't you have to live in a certain area or city with the address to vote?
Right, you live within your ward.
Right, what if-
But if somebody registered in my office back in June,
Right.
their current address is going to be listed here. So when you say, can I see your photo ID, that's all you're verifying is the photo ID portion of it.
And you're going to the place where your new address is
Yes.
already in the poll
And you
book.
would say what your new address is. You know, Pam
Okay.
Ubrig, 215 Church Avenue.
Okay. But if I came in with a driver's license with a different address than what's there, then I have to make a change, don't I, to?
Okay, now we're going to go to proof of
Okay, I'm sorry.
residency.
Okay.
That's where, if you're not registered, then you need to provide something with your current name and current address on it.
so if you're already a registered voter, it doesn't matter if you've moved 10 times between the time you registered and the time you go to vote, as long as your face matches, you know, who you are in person, and your signature matches what's on there, that's all that they're concerned about.
Correct.
Okay. Well, now that's interesting, because one of the arguments that I think was being made when this bill was first being proposed was it was somehow going to screw things up and disenfranchise students who are here, you know, 8-9 months out of the year, and they live probably back at home during the other few months, and they may have on their driver's license their parents' address. Do you remember
we'll
that
get-
argument?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
you-
get to the university.
Okay,
'cause
that's a whole different
that's
thing.
a different.
Okay.
But you still have to vote. You can't vote anywhere in the city with your driver's license.
No,
No,
but
no, you can't. You're still going to be registered, Pam Ubrig, 215 Church Avenue.
Right.
I'm registered at that address.
Right.
I have to vote at that ward.
Right.
My ID may say
Somewhere else.
somewhere else in the
I
city,
understand.
but I'm registered at that address, and I have to vote within my ward.
so you have to vote where you're registered at, the address that you're
Yes.
registered at.
Correct.
Okay. And if you want to vote somewhere else at your current address, say you've moved, then you need to contact your office and change that.
We can
Or
do
you-
that at the poll.
You can do that at the polls. So if an individual is not registered or they've moved, then that's proof of residency. Proof of residency changed. It used to be you had to live at your residence for 10 days. That's changed to 28 consecutive days. So this coming election, you have to live at your current address since July 12th.
Okay.
And then you're going to have to provide some documentation that you live at that place, that address. So you're going to fill out the registration form, either in my office or at the polling place. If for some reason, if your address is on your license, that's great. Then you can go through and they can complete everything. If it's not, then you could provide something, a bill, some statement or something computer generated that would be able to collaborate that you live at that address.
Like a cell phone bill, a utility bill from Wisconsin Public Service.
Anything
Anything
computer
that's-
generated,
Okay.
okay? You'd fill that out. The thing that has gone away with the voter registration is you used to be able to have a witness, a corroborating witness. You can no longer have that. You know, if it was a husband and wife, let's say I'm married, I'm not registered, I didn't bring my purse. Prior to this, my husband would be able to be my witness that I live there. That's no longer the case. You cannot have a witness any longer.
So it
Okay.
has to be something computer generated.
Yes,
That's your witness, if you will.
sure.
Okay. Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention was the university. That's a whole different creature. The city of Oshkosh has worked with the university where we've gotten lists of students prior to the election, and we give those mainly to the site, the polling site on the university, and then I have 2 districts that have off-campus living. I provide them with those lists also. So that's really not new to the city because we've been doing that. The one new thing is that students are going to have to show their ID along with their receipt fee payment. And that's going to be different for the university. Now my understanding is I'm sure that they're going to work something with their software that the students actually will have their address on their ID cards now. Okay, but in the past we have worked with the universities getting that listing, and we'll continue to work with them.
With so many variables, this is going to be complicated for your office, isn't it? Sort of.
Oh, it is.
You know.
Why the change to 28 days, and why requiring, not allowing a spouse to be the witness? What's the point of these changes?
I don't have that information.
Okay.
That
Pam
was.
didn't push this
I-
legislation through.
Okay.
I'm just.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
but
I
mean,
didn't make those decisions. I'm just here to
Yeah, no,
implement the
I know
law.
that, and I respect that, but I
Okay.
don't see where it improves the process. If it seems to me it clogs the process.
Well, I can see, you know, and maybe you've got some different thoughts on this. I can see where you wouldn't want a spouse or a roommate or whoever kind of corroborating your address. Because if there's going to be some fraud, you know, they might be willing to just kind of go along with it. But I don't understand the residency requirements so much. I mean,
I tell you one aren't the primaries in September?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're a new student at a college and you arrive 10 days before the primary, the 28 days isn't gonna work for you.
Correct. There have been elections in the past where they have not been there 10 days
10
and
days.
they were not able
But
to
28
vote.
with a primary,
also
with a
there-
start at school is difficult.
yeah.
But also they're going to change the primary dates.
They're going back to June now?
August.
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 Oh, then that would, for next year, for 12. Oh, well, then it's not an issue then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then this may not be so bad
Yeah.
as we were first thinking.
That
I
just
guess.
means students won't vote at all because then it's in August.
They'll vote in November.
Well,
Now,
that's true.
Okay.
I just want to clarify something because you said people wanting to vote in the in this upcoming election, and you know, these don't go into effect again until 2012, right? And that you were talking about the change between the 10 days and the 28 days. So will people not be able to vote in their particular ward or district if they haven't lived there for 28 days? Is that one that kicks in this year yet?
Yes, it kicked in
Okay,
immediately. The
okay.
signing of the poll books kicked in and the residency.
Okay.
So if somebody has lived at their new address for 20 days, they have to go back to their previous address and be able to vote at that address,
Okay.
that ward.
And I think that's a really important point for folks to remember. You know, we've got a super important recall election coming up on August 8th, and it is the 8th, right?
No.
It's the
Ninth.
9th.
Ninth.
It was
August
misprinted
9th.
as 8th at one point, and I've got that 8 stuck in my head now. Tuesday, August 9th. So, you know, please make sure that if you didn't live at your current address, or if you when election day rolls around, if you haven't been there for 28 full days, if you're not there already, then you know, go back to your previous polling place. Correct?
Correct. And if individuals have questions, they can call our office and we can check. Our office, we're a little bit more in tune because we've had quite a few elections, but sometimes when you ask, well, what was the last election you voted in? To me, that's July. To them, that's November.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if they have questions, call our office and we'll be happy to look it up and give them
236.
5011.
236-5011. Okay, so what's next on your list there?
Okay, the other item I wanted to touch base on was absentee ballot voting. That has changed. The ballots are now not available until the third Monday before the election. So July 25th is when we will first have the ballots available for individuals to come into the office to vote. The last day that you can vote is the Friday before the election, and we're open till 5 o'clock that day. So the Monday before the election, you used to be able to vote at the clerk's office. That's no longer the case. Friday
So they have
is the,
shortened it.
yes, Friday is the cutoff date. Okay, that's the same with registering. You know, you can register up until that Friday, then it gets cut off, and then they'd have to register at the polls on Tuesday, August 9th.
Now, what about reasons for voting absentee? You know, many years ago, I recall, there were certain very strict criteria by which you could vote absentee. You know, you had to, I think, be hospitalized or in the military, and you know, I mean, it was pretty stringent. And if you didn't meet those requirements, you just couldn't vote absentee. And then it became very loose. You know, you didn't have to give any reason at all.
Correct, and that was it. You had to give a reason. You had to be out of town. Basically, you couldn't have the reason, well, I don't want to stand in line at the polls, which was really quite interesting. In November of 2010, the lines were out the door here at City Hall. People waited several hours to vote, and there were no lines at the polls. In November.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So under the new rules, will they be, I'm sorry, under the new rules, do you have to give a reason, or can you still not give a reason?
You do not need to give a reason.
Okay.
They can come in and vote for whatever.
It's just those dates that have changed,
Yes,
as far
the
as
dates
when
have
the
changed.
ballot's available
Yep.
and the last time that you can vote.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's convenience.
It's more convenience, yes. And then I also wanted to mention, because we do mail out ballots for requests, like Cheryl had given me a request for an absentee ballot. The last day that those can be mailed out is the Thursday prior to the election. Okay? So when voters get their ballots, they need to vote, put it in the envelope, seal it, sign it, make sure you get a witness, and it gets back to the clerk's office by election day. Because we have to keep a log of when ballots are mailed out, when they come back in. We don't ever look to see how you voted, but we log all of that information. Then they get sorted, put in transfer bags, sealed, and they get delivered to the polls on election day, and those ballots actually get counted. So it's real important, because a lot of people think that those ballots don't get counted unless it's a close race. They do get counted. So we have to have them by election day. If we get them the day after the election, they don't get counted.
Okay. So, so the envelope has to be witnessed. That can be anybody, though, right? That part of it hasn't changed.
No,
a
that has
spouse or a roommate or you know,
Neighbor.
a friend, neighbor, whoever. Anybody can serve as a witness.
But you can also vote absentee just by going to the clerk's office starting
Yes.
Monday, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
This is a quote from Karen Peters, a Dane County election official, and she says, this is going to be horrendous when you get to the presidential election of 2012, because every one of these have to be checked, and they have to write in their names, and you're dealing with thousands of voters. What's your response to that?
I think it's going to slow the procedure down. I've implemented a procedure, and in my mind, I think it's going to work. And we've gone through one election, so I'm curious to talk to my poll workers at my next training session to see if we can fine-tune it further. If I have to look at the positive on this, at least we're going to have a couple elections under our belt.
To work it out.
Try to work out the bugs before we get to the really busy time. It is going to take time, but as I've instructed my workers, as one is verifying, looking to make sure that that's that person, the other one is looking up the voter, then while
Push the book up.
Yep, and then you get in the signature, and then you're handing out the number. So we're trying to streamline it somewhat, but it is going to take more time.
You know, the poll workers are wonderful people, and they tend to be older population. How many hours could a 75-year-old person continue to read driver's licenses?
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna have to rotate them, aren't you? Or-
Well, I ask my teams of poll workers to rotate because it only strengthens
Yeah,
their team as they learn every aspect of the election. You know, whether it's looking up the names in the poll book or initialing the ballots, registering people, they're supposed to be rotating.
Yeah. But you're not just checking, oh, that's Dan. I mean, you're going to check and see the address. You're going to check and see whether it's a current license. So they're actually going to have to be reading these a little bit,
They
right?
actually have to, you know, look up and down.
Yeah. This is worse than a bouncer at a bar.
And probably not as well paid
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
bouncer at a
yeah.
bar.
But you would admit it's going to probably take more
It
time.
will take longer,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I will admit that.
Well, and maybe that's another reason for people to, you know, vote absentee. You know, so that they're avoiding some of these longer lines
But
and
they
delays.
will have to show ID at our counter also.
Well,
So,
if you
I
vote
mean-
by mail, though,
Well, individuals are going to have to mail in a copy of their license so that we can attach that to their application.
I wouldn't mind doing that as opposed to standing in a long line.
Okay.
You know,
It's everybody's preference.
so I have to keep that in mind when I'm voting absentee in the recall election. I need to mail you a copy of my driver's license?
In 2012,
Okay.
that is for sure going to be implemented. It's mandatory. It's optional at this point.
I'll keep one handy.
Excellent.
Okay. Anything else that that people need to know as they're thinking about this? If someone, I can just think of a question right now offhand. If someone does not have a driver's license, either because they've just never gotten a license, or maybe they're elderly and they no longer drive, therefore they wouldn't have a license. There are ways of getting these voter IDs, correct?
Correct. The Government Accountability Board has asked all municipalities that are having elections to hand out this information sheet to the voters. So we handed them out at the July 12th primary, and we will hand them out again at the August 9th election. And at the bottom, it does explain to the voters how they're able to go to the Department of Transportation and get a free ID card. It's for voting purposes only. So if you have a driver's license, you still have to pay to get a driver's license. This is for individuals that don't have a driver's license, and they're just using this for voting purposes.
Okay.
But we have the sheet in the office, and you know what? I think we'll have it put up on our website too.
And I was going to say, if you can get me a copy of that, I'll put it on. Okay, thank you.
You may
That
have
was
that.
simple enough.
It was.
I'll put it on our website as well. And but it doesn't sound as, I guess, ominous as I first thought it was.
But the premise is fraud. Is there fraud?
I don't see it in the city of Oshkosh, and I have to say, this past election, it was interesting. There were individuals that were eager to show their ID, and then there were other voters that said, you know what, I don't have to show it until 2012. So it's a principle on some people's part.
Yeah, you're the largest election person in District 18 of the three counties. Were you asked for comments on this bill at all? Did you testify on the bill? Anyone call you?
No.
Nobody?
No.
No.
So they didn't apparently seek input from clerks.
No.
As to,
No.
Well, and I think that's just kind of sad. I mean, I know it's getting into politics a little bit, and we don't want to put you on the spot like that, but that is sad. But once again, it's one of these mandates. It's kind of like an unfunded mandate. You tell people they have to do it, but you don't give them money to do it. And here they're, implementing things that directly affect your staff, your poll workers, and never sought any input. And I just think that's kind of shameful.
She
really.
probably knows more about elections than anyone who voted for the bill.
Yeah, who could shed better light on it than clerks,
Yeah.
whether it be city clerks or county clerks or town clerks,
I
whatever.
didn't mean to get you in, but I mean, it's important
okay.
to know that this is not it didn't come from the grassroots.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think it's interesting also for individuals to know that no matter what the turnout is, we still go through all the same procedures. We still do the publications, the testing, the assigning and training of election workers, securing all the equipment. That all still gets done no matter what the turnout is for each election. So I'm always delighted when we have a larger turnout. That tickles my heart. And then the other thing I wanted to touch base on was election night. The polls are open from 7 in the morning till 8 at night. And for whatever reason, people expect to have those results like that. It's unfortunate because they don't realize what's all involved at the polls. If they haven't had time to run through the absentees, those have to be processed. They have to print out the results, secure the equipment, finish doing all the reporting, securing everything, so that if there ever was a recount, that we can provide documentation that everything was secure. So it does take time. We try to do it diligently and efficiently and still keep the integrity of the election.
Sure.
So-
Well, and I know the county's website is usually pretty fast with getting those returns on there. But people have to be aware that if they're looking at the county's website for that, they'll change, but you have to keep refreshing your screen. If you don't, those results are just going to stay the same constantly.
And remember, they're unofficial until the canvass takes place.
Yes.
Which is later. Yeah.
So,
The other thing is, older people have worked a long day. In a way, the most important part of the process is the accurate of doing all these things. People get tired, and
do.
some precincts or boards might be slower than others. Well, we're not, So I mean, it's not bing, it's done.
Correct. And it's interesting. I have some sites that are very slow. The university, it's like watching paint dry some elections, and then other times it's crazy. And then you have like Carl Traeger or Alberta Kimball, you know, they did 900 to 1,000 people just in this primary. It was busy, you know. So I have a great group of people that work
Well, that's
the polls,
good.
I really do.
And I just want to touch real quickly, Pam, on, you know, you talked about circling that circle completely in on the ballot. Just real quickly, what should people keep in mind as they're voting, whether it be, you know, circling the circle or doing the touch screen? You know, what should they keep in mind to make sure that their ballot counts?
Okay, the touch screen is real simple. When you touch that candidate, let's say it's council and you're voting for 3. Once you've touched 3 times, the rest of the options go away. So if you want to change it, you have to click that person, then it comes back to change it.
Okay.
So you cannot ever overvote on it, and then you have the opportunity to verify it on the printout, okay? On the paper ballot, it's real important that you color in that oval. We saw also where pens dragged over names. You know, they colored it and the pen dragged over a name. So the machine picked that up. But when we did the recount, it was obvious of the voter intent that that wasn't a vote for that particular candidate. So it's just be aware to color in the oval.
Make
Don't
sure
exit.
it's completely circled in.
Yes.
If you go outside of the lines a little bit, that doesn't discount it.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Just don't put like a dot, or don't exit, or don't color, or underline the name, or circle the name, things like that. Just, it tells you on the instructions to color the oval in.
And make sure that you're using the marking pens that are there, not a pencil or a ballpoint pen that's in your purse or your pocket or something. And they're real good. I don't think I've ever walked up to the voting booth and there not been a pen there. So
Yeah, and they're instructed to rotate them so that they're fresh.
yeah.
So-
So all right, good. Pam's office phone number again is 236-5011. I hope we've been putting up the address for the Government Accountability Board to get more information on some of the rules and so forth, and the things that you need to know and be prepared for. And Pam was good enough to give us this list of other things that I will be getting on the website. And so hopefully this will go as smoothly as this half hour went. So thank you much for being here.
Thanks,
We
Pam, very
appreciate
much.
it. Good
Thank you.
information. Good information. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Professor Jim Simmons. He's a political science professor at UWO, and we'll be talking about politics and elections. We'll be right back.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
And welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. We're joined now by political science professor Jim Simmons from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and he's loaded with his maps and and everything else, and we're loaded with our questions. We want to talk about redistricting. We've been reading a lot about that in the news recently, and so we want to talk about that a little bit later. If we have time, we're going to talk to Jim a little bit about what the newly passed or recently passed state budget is doing to things at UW-Oshkosh and morale of employees and so forth. But before we get into redistricting, Jim, and welcome, thanks for being here, want to talk about the recall election up in Green Bay that took place, well, the other night, but by the time you see this show, it'll be a little bit past that. But it took place 2 days ago as we're taping this on the 21st of July. And, what does that, I mean, it was the first true recall election. I mean, we had a primary here, but this one was the first of 9 that's coming forth as far as senators. And it was incumbent, Democratic incumbent Dave Hansen against his challenger, David Vander Leest. And, Hansen won by about 66% of the vote.
2-1.
What do you think that says about what we can look for in the future senatorial recall elections?
Recall elections are so rare that, it would be nice to have more data and more background experience to give you so that I could sound like a political scientist. But there have only been 2 such elections in, recently in the state recall, and a couple things. One, I was a little surprised that Vander Leest clearly has a problem because he has a questionable background in terms of taxes and
a couple criminal convictions for
exactly
misdemeanor things.
Exactly. So, but he did lead the recall effort. Yet, not only did he only get 1/3 of the vote, but he got fewer votes than the number of people who signed the petition. I mean, it was 15,000 people had to sign in order to, actually more because some of them were rejected, and yet he didn't do well. And I would have thought that the Republicans would have been energized, despite the quality of the candidate, who was weak. Nygren, for whatever reason, didn't collect enough signatures. You need more than you. He was experienced enough that he should have collected what he needed, and he didn't. But even so, I would have thought if Republicans were energized enough to want to keep the governor and keep the majority, that they would have turned out and you would have gotten a normal Republican vote. And that district, although Hansen is popular, personally he is well respected and liked, it's a Republican leaning district. And a 2-1 vote, that's fairly suggestive. Not a great turnout, 25%, but remember this is July, this is the summer. People are supposed to be gone. You would expect even less. So. Yeah, Democrats should be fairly optimistic at this point.
Okay.
How would you read the fake candidate in this area in Just King? Were you surprised how many votes that he got?
No, I was assuming the same thing.
Okay.
I was assuming that, in fact, although it's a fake Democrat, that Republicans would turn out to embarrass,
Right.
if there's the level of anger of Democrats leaving the state, that Republicans would be energized too, and they would have turned out and maybe 40% of the vote, and just won handily. I don't think it was independents voting for the fake Republican. In this district, I didn't see a lot of evidence that supporters for Hopper or that the Republicans generally did a stealth campaign where they made phone calls or did the robocall or trying to get out the vote on behalf of the fake Democrat. That did happen in some other districts.
How do you look at the November or the August 9th election between Hopper and King? What's your sense of what will happen?
Well, I mean, obviously this is underpolled. I mean, we only have one poll, Public Policy polling firm. It tends to poll for the Democrats, but it's a fairly good firm, and it showed King up by 3 points.
Okay.
You know, within the margin of error, but still, you know, that's at the edge of the margin.
Okay.
So, and it you know, the voters have already decided you're going to see one of the nastiest campaigns. It's hard to imagine they could get any worse than they are, but you know, if they can, they will.
They will.
Yeah. But no, I don't think that's going to matter. I think one of the advantages King has is the Democrats have a better ground game. I mean, if you looked at how easily they collected the signatures they needed, you know, they didn't need to hire anyone, and they didn't have anyone from outside collecting the signatures. So they have people going door to door. In fact, I didn't vote for a change early in the morning, and I had 2 different people coming to my house saying, "You haven't voted yet, are you?"
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, I've gotten to the point where I don't answer my phone if I don't recognize the, you know, the caller.
I've
on my
gotten to
phone.
that point too,
Yeah.
because I'm really sick of all these political
Sure.
calls. You know, I vote in every single election.
Every single one.
I'm motivated, but I'm sick of the
I
calls.
mean, you look at the level. I mean, to get people to vote. I mean, getting people to vote is difficult enough, particularly if you make it hard for them with an ID or you know, registration or registering by party or registering so many days before the election. You know, you know, any cost that you put on the campaign is going to reduce the voter turnout. But the energy that you see in the middle of the summer, I mean, getting people to actually go out and petition to get someone,
Yeah.
you know, to collect a recall petition, 25% of the people who voted in the last election, that's huge. I mean, most Americans have signed a petition, but almost no one collects them. And getting people to do what they're doing in this weather, I mean, the heat.
Yeah, yeah. I want to play devil's advocate, though, on the Hansen-Vanderleest race, because, you know, yes, Vanderleest was not a very strong candidate, not a viable candidate at all. He had very little money in comparison to
Couple of thousand.
Yeah, in comparison to what Dave Hansen had, and yet he was able to garner that number of votes. Do you think that is suggestive of anything?
Look, we reached a level of polarization where people, I mean, if you are someone who identifies with the Republican Party, it really doesn't matter who the candidate is.
Okay.
I mean, you may stay home, but if you turn out, you're going to vote for David Vanderleest. I want to say the devil, but
Yeah.
but that you know that's
Yeah.
and on the other side the same.
Yeah.
So some of the other candidates have personal problems, and we're seeing a lot of that. Clerk, for example, we're seeing, we're not in his district, but since we're part of the Green Bay media market, we're seeing all of his hit and run and you know, his failure to pay his child support and what have you, and fact is, for Democratic voters, that will not matter.
Yeah. Well, you know, you talk about these personal problems, and, you know, okay, Vanderleest had a couple of misdemeanor convictions. Gordon Hentz now has a misdemeanor conviction because he, I guess, pled no contest to it or whatever. But there's a misdemeanor on his record now.
Sure.
You know, and people seem to be making a big deal of this at times, like on the blogs and stuff. You know, his, in comparison to what some of these other folks have, is so minuscule. I mean, I'm not trying to diminish the fact that it's there, but it's really very minor in comparison to the gravity, the number of things that some of these other folks
No,
have.
I understand, and I won't say that Democratic candidates get a pass, but Democratic voters are much more tolerant of personal foibles. You know. Homosexuality, you know, those kinds of things. But Republican voters tend to be much more moralistic. So if you've got
Or at least they say they
divorce,
are.
or well, no, I mean, in terms of their voting behavior, and the candidates, of course, often run on family values, so they're making that part of the campaign. But when hypocrisy shows itself, then Republicans tend to be in trouble. I mean, I'm almost convinced that if Anthony Weiner, if the first thing that came out was the only thing that happened, he would have survived that. But you know, when it became overwhelming, that was more and more of this, and more women were showing up saying that the same thing had happened to them, then he had to go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you have anything else on the election, or do you want to move on to redistricting?
Well, you know, put your Las Vegas hat on. Do you think the Democrats will control the Senate after August 9th?
Boy, that's something that we never want to do in political science.
Well, don't be political science. Just be a Las Vegas odds maker.
If I'm betting the House,
Yeah.
I could see the Democrats picking up 3 seats.
Okay.
I'm guessing that Kapanke is probably, you know, he probably will lose.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very good prospect with Hopper.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably bet the farm
Mm-hmm.
that way. And then after that, it becomes tough. Is it Darling? Is it Olson? Is it Harsdorf? One of those 3 could be the third. Now, the problem is that, of course, I think on the Democratic side, I think Wersch is safe. Holprin, you know, there was a recall effort that failed against him before, and his district is extremely red.
I was driving through it 2
Yeah,
days ago.
I mean, it is amazing that he's managed to be elected in that area.
And where's his district?
Up north.
Okay.
Northeast Wisconsin. It's
I think his opponent's name starts with S, like Simlick or something, and there's signs, 10-to-1 signs over his, all over up there.
she's Tea Party person. I mean, she's very extreme. I mean, so the only saving grace for him is that although his district is extremely red, she might be outside the range even for.
Yeah, that's all I had on. Thank you for answering that.
Well, can we get you to put on your Las Vegas hat one more time?
Ooh.
If the Senate, if the Democrats pick up 3 or more seats,
And don't lose one.
Yeah, if they're able to regain control of the Senate, what do you think that means then for a Walker recall election?
Well, in terms of policy, the cows already left the barn. I mean,
Yeah.
The fake Democrats were clearly an effort not to give the Republicans more time to campaign, something which they really don't need, and raising money has not been an issue for either party in this summer in Wisconsin. What they needed was time to push through a number of policies, especially redistricting. And the redistricting will probably have more long-term impact upon Wisconsin politics than most other things.
But you say there are not a lot of changes in redistricting.
You know, part of it is Incumbent Protection Act, and it's interesting to see which incumbents they want to protect. And for example, you know, Duffy just picked up the seat that Dave Obey held, and that's been a Democratic seat for a long time, in part because Obey's held it and incumbents have
Something
a
in the
used
Wausau
bench.
area.
But if you look at what they did to that district, they've taken out Democratic areas and put them in Ron Kine's area. So they've in effect made Ron Kine, who's always been in a swing district, Democrats hold it, Republicans hold it, and they've made Ron Kine safe. And it looks like they're protecting Duffy at the prospect of not being competitive in Kine district. And you might think, well, Duffy is a recently elected Republican. He is important to what the Republicans are trying to do nationally, but so is Reed Ribble. And they didn't do.
Reed is up in the Green Bay area, northeast corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they didn't do much to protect him. And another interesting thing is Congressman Petri, he's been our congressman for a long time, and he's a moderate Republican, not always in favor with the leadership. And they've extended part of his district along the lakefront already all the way down to the border of Milwaukee. And as you know, much of the Republican leadership tends to come from the Milwaukee suburbs. So if Petri should retire, I would not be surprised that we'll be represented by someone who
In
is
Germantown,
suburban.
Menominee Falls or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. How about the local, the legislative races around
Pretty
here?
much a wash.
Okay.
You know, in the case of Gordon Hentz, they gave him a little more West Haven, which
Okay.
is Republican area, but a little bit north.
Okay. Now, how about the Litchins? I heard that Litchins really got into the district north of there, and that I think it's Shaber. I may be mispronouncing it. Her district, she said, changed by 50%. So they're out to get her. She's a Democrat.
Litchins is a Republican.
No, Shaber, the one
Shaber.
north of there. They've given, so those two assembly districts, from what I read, have been, Litchins has a safer district, and the
Right.
Democrat has a less safe Democratic district.
Well, they've done a number of interesting things too, where they've pitted incumbents against each other,
Right.
and they've moved people currently in, or if Nussbaum or Clark were to win, under the redistricting, they'd have to move because they wouldn't be living in.
How come they have this carpetbagger law to begin with? Shouldn't you live in the district that you're elected in before you're
Well,
elected?
they shift you out by redistricting, so
Yeah.
that now you get elected, but now you have to move,
Yeah.
or at least you have to own a place
But
that you can
Buckstaff
claim.
didn't live in.
No,
Yeah.
but if he were elected, then at least theoretically he'd have to rent an apartment which he would claim to be his residence.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I personally, I think they ought to just change the damn law to make it so that you can't run in a district unless you live there.
Well,
You
it's
You know, they want to take care of voter fraud. How about something like this, you know?
well, where you live is always questionable too. I mean, Carol Ressler maintained a home in
Yes,
Oshkosh,
she
but
did.
She didn't live here.
she was married and was
Yeah.
living with her husband in Madison for
Yep.
years, and her official residence was here. And to be fair, she spent a lot of time here. I mean,
Yeah.
she was a very effective.
You said
representative.
in the Northwestern article, which I thought was a good article, that there could be a challenge from the Democrats. And my question is, on what grounds could they challenge the
Well,
redistricting?
the past three redistrictings ended up in court, and the court drew the district boundaries. And in 2001, 1991, 1981, and 1961, the courts essentially drew the boundaries. And the reason being is because we had divided government. In other words, we had, in 2001, we had the Democrats holding the state Senate, and Chuck Chvala and the Democrats drew their map, and Scott Jensen and the Republicans drew their map. It ended up in court, and the courts eventually decided on something that looks very much like the Republican map. If it's not a situation like that you not only don't hold either house,
Right.
and you don't hold the governorship, and conservatives are in the majority on the state Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court, then you have a problem, because you have to argue that, number one, the district isn't contiguous. And if you look at Ron Kine's district and you see this strange little creature with a head,
Going way over.
yeah, way over there, you have to say, well, it's contiguous in the sense that it's all connected, but
But it's a gerrymandered district.
yeah. But political gerrymandering isn't against the law. I mean, you can do that. It has to be contiguous. In other words, it all has to connect. It has to be equal in population. They are.
Okay.
And then you have to honor community, especially race. I mean, there's the Civil Rights Acts and so on. And so that if you start diluting minority populations and preventing them from electing officials by your districting, then you have a problem. But the Democrats have that kind of problem because they'd like to dilute minority populations, because if they do, that means they can elect more
people.
Democrats. And the Republicans would like to see majority minority districts because it concentrates
Right.
Democratic voters in small areas.
Have they done that at all?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
If you look at, as you know, the largest minority populations are in southeast Wisconsin. And what they've done down there is to, create suburban districts and urban districts. And so you take a county and, the one district is entirely urban and the other district, which is going to be a Republican district, is going to be a Republican district. And both of them safe.
Interesting.
And what that means, the level of polarization that you've seen in Wisconsin is going to be exacerbated by that, because if you elect people who have job security because the only way to replace them is in their own party primary because they're not conservative enough or they're not liberal enough, then there's no real reason for them to compromise. In fact, they need to appeal to the fringe of their own political party and not pay attention to the independents or voters of the other political party because they're safe.
We're almost out of time. We're down to like about 2 minutes. Did you want to just touch on
Anything on UWO? What's the morale over there, and what's the number of retirements, number of vacancies?
We lost over 80 people,
Okay.
more than twice what we usually
Wow.
lose, and there are whole programs that have lost. And given that the compensation reductions, the increased pay for the pension and health care, which is on average about an 8% cut in compensation, and then the insurance will be worse because there'll be more co-pays, more deductibles. None of that is hit yet. So that for most people it'll just begin to be seen. So if you weren't paying attention, you will when you start seeing your paycheck. And we weren't competitive anyway, and I would expect that the retirements probably will continue apace, and I would expect to see more and more people who can leave will.
In the system, it's up 75% in retirement estimate requests from 2010. It's up to 18,759 compared to 10,724 the year before. They can't even answer their requests in their emails. They said, well, give us time.
Yeah, the number of people requesting information about what happens if they retire has gone up through the roof. I think our chancellor and our administration has done a lot better job with the budget and anticipated many of these problems in a way that has meant that the impact on our campus is less than some of the other UW schools. So if that hadn't been the case, we'd probably be over 100.
Wow. All right. Well, they're telling me we're out of time.
Okay.
So
We're out of time.
We're just going to wrap it up. But thanks so much for being here.
Yeah,
Sure.
Thanks, Jim, very much.
A lot of good information, and let's hope your predictions come true.
I hope they do too. I'd hate to see.
He's going to lose the whole, he bet the whole farm
Yeah.
on the one
He
race.
did.
He doesn't own a farm, but he owns a
Yeah,
house.
you can have my farm.
Are you raising chickens, though?
I've heard that hasn't become all that common despite the ordinance.
One.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Be sure and go to the polls on Tuesday, August 9th. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.
Hey, anytime.
Thank you so much.